Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast today. We have returning guest, Certified Facilitator Maya Dayan.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome.
It's bright and early today.
Yep.
Cool.
Starting fresh on a conversation about relationships. Don't you want to always start your day like that?
I just want to wake up to, a relationship done different. So, speaking of that, you have a class coming up. What did you change the date? Because,
Yeah, November 1, 2, and 3.
okay, November 1, 2, and
First,
3.
yeah.
And it's the class Relationships Done Different in North York, Ontario, Canada.
And online. Yeah.
And online emphasis the online.
Yeah.
Well, so my question is like, what is relationships done different?
Ooh, cool. Yeah. I mean, it's not um, uh, not random that we start with at least 3 days about talking about this topic because it's a huge topic. Um, and I could say that the basis of it is that we start with relationship with a lie, and then everywhere we're trying to go with that is trying to solve a lie that's not real and true. So if a relationship is, and like if we function as beings in communion and we keep trying to create relationship, we're already starting with some stuck point, and trying to create something that's not real and true for us, which is very interesting, confusing, could be curious, could be ever evolving journey. It's kind of, how do you take it? Kind of thing. So if I look at like my life and like discovering the tools of access consciousness and discovering that I'm a conscious being and that I am an infinite being and all those things that I only discovered at age 35 onwards, then I could start looking back in my life and seeing like, oh, okay, like why was I so different with relationships as a 7-year-old? Why did the whole best friend thing never work for me? Why did, I don't know, like, how is it that I could not talk to someone for 6 months, and then when we met, the conversation started with this huge intimacy, like time didn't matter, like just all these things of how I did relationships differently, couldn't acknowledge it, couldn't see the gift in it, and just starting to count those gifts in order to create a different future for myself, for the world.
Wow, that's really cool. And you'd mentioned the best friend thing, and that's really interesting because like I think sometimes we put definitions on like what a best friend is. And because I'll say I've caught myself a couple of days saying like, oh, my best friend. And I think, with the parameters of that, we decide and conclude what a best friend is. Because it's like, oh, I've grown up with them since diapers, or I've known them my whole entire life, and then we're best friends. Or there's like, and it's, still the same where it's like, oh, I've known this person for so long, but we never talk. I have these people who I've just known since like school or high school or whatever, and it's like, and I'm like, oh yeah, like my lifelong friend, and I'm like, but we never talk.
Right. And in that sense, like if we were talking about relationships that are based on a lie, like when we have those meeting points, the expectation and the projection is that you will be the same person as you were as a 5-year-old. And that's like that sticking point that never allows change. And a lot of things that are built into this reality are about having us not change. And, it's not necessarily a process that we do on purpose or awareingly, but like I can say, like that some people that I meet, I will, if I'm not conscious and aware, I will start the conversation as if they're the same person that I met when I was 10 years old, And what kind of change or presence does that allow them? Like, who are they now? you know?
That's really cool because that tool, Who Am I Today, and what grand and glorious adventures will I have? Like that allows so much change. But then it's also what you just said. I look at my own self. It's like, how often do we do that with ourselves? You know, today I'm like, oh, still me and I'm still gonna do everything I do the same every day. But like that doesn't even allow the change for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is a great part of what Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, talks about. Like he starts with, if we don't have the 5 elements of intimacy with ourselves, we can't really have it with anyone else. And in that same correlation, what you said, like if I can't have that relationship of change with myself, how can I be that and do that with the world? And obviously it's something we keep on building. It's not, oh, okay, I'm not going to have any relationships until I solve this thing with myself. And you can see the progress, like how you do have different relationships now, or how you could have a different thing with this person now that you're more aware of like the level of change that you're willing to have and be with you and with everyone else. So it's a really cool ripple of like starting to change our relationship with ourselves, which changes our relationship with everyone in our world.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's like allowance of the change and just also like the awareness as well. It's funny, I was looking at, meeting Gary Douglas, and then I've taken classes with a lot of different people, and then taking a class with Dr. Dayan here, who's the co-founder of Access Consciousness. And it's like almost, you know, when I go into my meeting someone or anyone, it's like this expectation that they'll be kind of like normal. And then it was funny because when I took a class with Dr. Dane here, um, it was the most not normal space that like I've ever been in. And I was like, this blows away my expectations. And it wasn't like in this like way that I could ever think. It was like this a world of difference, you know?
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the
Yeah,
classes are always fun too. Like,
because everything we think about interaction is also part of that not change. We'll meet someone in the street and we'll talk about the weather, and and there's a level that we're so bored of it, but we still participate in it. And it's only up to us to start demanding, okay, I want to create something different here with everything, with everyone. And
wow.
that's the journey. Like it's not linear, it's not um the, the steps are not like step 1, step 2, step 3, but it's just this demand of like, I would like something different.
I saw a sticker on a car yesterday, and it said, I think it literally said, be different, be weird.
Mm,
And it was like that little How to Train Your Dragon, and it was a sticker. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Because it reminded me of the Be Different, Stay Weird, I think.
totally.
Well, I think this reality's done a very good job of setting up that autopilot for the interaction, for conversation. Whereas if maybe what would a question be? Like, how weird can I be today, or how different can I be today?
Well, giving that example of Dr. Dane here, whether you met him or not, if you're listening to this, like it was so cool because I could immediately tap into that thing of like, oh, wow, if I have no expectation of what interaction looks like, what else is available here? Like, wow,
Mhm.
it's so cool. And as you said, like, who am I today and what grand and glorious adventures can I have? So if my meeting point is more like this open space of question, then what can show up with a person that, even if I know them for 15 years, what can show up today?
That's different.
Mm, yeah.
Well, I guess I've been asking because I read, I mean, I guess I read the Gentleman's Club like a Bible. And I would actually like to read Relationships Done Different. And it's like I've got my heels dug in, and I'm like, maybe I'll just buy it today and just read it. because it could just be that simple.
There's two books. I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but I'll just mention there's Divorceless Relationship by Gary Douglas and maybe Dr. Dayan, I'm not sure. And then there's the Relationship, Are You Sure You Want One by Simon Millicis and Brendan White. So both of them are amazing.
Yeah, so that's with Simone Milasas and Brendan Watt. And yeah, so that's the one I was like thinking of because I'm like, I have it here somewhere, but
Yeah.
and so I guess what I one of the like things that I always ask, I kind of go to is like, in regards to relationships, it's like, what can I do different? What can I be different? Like, how can I be a difference, and something different so that it's not the same, there's not a same pattern, outcome, loop, like that continuous like loop we get stuck in of like waking up and doing either the same thing or choosing the same thing. I'm like, what can I be different? Like, how can I be different?
And I really love that book because it's so simple and they give a lot of examples. Like a lot of times we don't really know, oh, what would it look like if I implement tools in my life? Or like, it sounds more like these theoretical questions and they put it in a very pragmatic way and give examples from their own lives of what it looked like to add the access consciousness tools to an existing relationship. Like, and even just that title that puts you immediately in question. Like, are you sure you want one? And it works both ways. It works whether you have one, whether you don't have one. It's like, because you could have one and you could be functioning totally from autopilot and not creating any change in the existing relationship. And you can not have one and keep claiming that you want one. Like, there's so much conclusion that we function from in that area of life that, yeah, just adding really any level of questions can start changing that for you, and just having more peace about it and with it can change everything.
Yeah, I what I love about access consciousness and having any conversation with uh like facilitators is a lot of the conversations go back to like you. Like it's like, they're like, "Oh, what would you like? What is your reality?" Or, even having someone's back is like really cool because it's like, how often do we not create and include us and our bodies?
And also that really, really, I want to say complicated, but I mean it kind of depends on us and the level of freedom we're willing to have. But like, how much do we create our relationship by seeing everything that people created around us, that we see on media, that we see on movies? Like, we're totally lost in what we would actually desire, because there's a picture perfect, because there's a utopia of what a relationship looks like. And until we choose it, we're so far from ourselves and what it could look like just for us, just for fun, you know?
Yeah. The other day, like yesterday, it was really interesting. I had a conversation and it was about kind of acknowledging everything from being kind of like even before like the dimensions, spaces, and lifetimes. So like before you were born in the womb and then kind of growing up, acknowledging a lot that happened. And when I acknowledged it, I think that kind of also gives a bit of freedom because it's like, oh, cool. So this actually happened, you know? And now what else is possible knowing that I've acknowledged that? And
Mm.
so it's like, because you had mentioned like if you're, well, maybe, I mean, 2-year-olds have friends, but like, as a 5-year-old, when you're in those spaces, or even 7 years old, you might have friendships and it could be different because as children just meet and play and then they're done and then they go forward and they don't make it significant. you know
Yeah, unless the adults around them do so, which they do. But it definitely taught me a lot to just watch my kids on the playground. I was like, oh, this creature is here, I'm here, we might as well interact. And then, they would run back to me after 20 minutes of play or something like that. And I would be like, oh, what was their name? And they're like, I don't know, There was nothing significant except a lot of fun, a lot of play, and then, they moved on with their lives. And I was like, wow, wow, like there's so many nanoseconds of where significance kicks in that we choose or we learned how to choose, and we just go through the process of unlearning that.
Yeah. Or it's like making those happy moments just so significant, like as
Mhm.
an adult, it's like, oh, this happened and what would it take for this to be forever?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of funny, that I was like looking at the fact that I haven't had my bars run for a while
mhm.
and then getting like hopes and dreams ran because I guess it is sometimes going into like the brain where the brain just is so insane and makes up these things of like um like the happily ever after or things are gonna last forever or like what if things could change and be different but if the most interesting thing is like how do you I guess just acknowledge what is instead of what you'd like it to be.
Mm. Yeah,
Maybe it's just that. You
yeah.
know, oh, this is what it
And you
is.
keep discovering more of that the more you go along, because you start your journey with awareness, mindfulness, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, when you're able to see this in your blinders, like, and slowly but surely you're able to see more and you're able to see more, and it's can be confronting, it can be uh, uncomfortable, it can be easy, it can be all kinds of things. But the more you are willing to not judge you, the more you're willing to see. Because part of seeing is also like, oh, I've been such an asshole in this area. And we don't necessarily consider that a lot of times as part of the consciousness journey because it sounds like something negative. But no, if I admit or am willing to see that blind spot of, oh, I'm an asshole in this area, how much more can I see what is and not what I want it to be? Like in the past 4 months, Dr. Dayan here has been talking a lot about how you think you're behaving in one way and actually you're projecting something totally different in the world. And then you get these daggers back at you and you're like, but I thought I'm a wonderful person doing this thing, doing caring from judgment or whatever it is. I can share a link after the call of like a free call that he was talking about that. But it's like this place of, and again, those blinders that we think we're behaving one way, we're actually doing something different. And that's where that thing that you mentioned comes in of like, you have to see what is, not what you want it to be. Like, and then when you see what is, you're like, you can change it. You can't change it until you see what is.
It can be so easy for the third party to see, but then within
Mm,
yourself, it's really like
totally.
it's like a playground exploration.
And that's the gift of knowing when you need to take a class, knowing when you need a private session, knowing when you just call a friend. Like, um, and that's another gift of having the facilitators and access consciousness, which is very different than any method that I participated in, just in the sense that it is about empowering you to know that you know, but also it's like you're not perfect. And our, highest ranking people in access, who are the founders and the co-founders, are not perfect. And they show us all the time how they assist each other with like, can you ask me a question? Can you
Mhm.
facilitate me about this? Like, because our mind is a very interesting and insane thing, we learn how to reach for help and give ourselves more freedom. And that's such a vulnerable space and such a gift for everyone. Like, we learned it in this reality as a weakness, but actually that's the beginning of creating freedom for yourself. So
Mhm.
again, a learning curve and step by step expanding your receiving and your reality.
Well, yeah, it's awesome that you just mentioned receiving because I was like thinking about that as you were talking, and it's like, is it also being willing to, well, acknowledge everything, who you are, and be willing, so acknowledgement and being willing to be everything, but acknowledge it. Because like, how often do people think, well, if I'm this perfect person, like you had mentioned, or like if I project that I am this perfect, happy person, but then, it's you could be doing the opposite of being angry or just insane. And then being able to look at and laugh at that and be like, oh, well, how insane am I? And then receive everything and receive all the, awareness that you're coming to and just receiving yourself,
Mhm.
like it's so funny. I'm getting that we look so often to the outside instead of actually looking at us as the source
Yes.
and then exploring us, our inner selves or who we are and the being that we are. And, that's funny. The source in Uluru, Australia is coming up. I look at that and I'm like, I've never been. I'd like to go. What would it take? Because it's cool,
Yeah.
like, be acknowledging yourself as the source instead of anything on the outside seems just a little bit more fun and a bit more as a like powerful and empowering
Yeah.
rather than
And
putting
it's
everything outside.
and it's this cool thing as somewhere to get to, which can be very quick, can be very like take a lot of steps along the way, and the less we judge it, the more we get there. Like, because if we're giving today the example of relationship, and then I notice how many external examples I'm comparing my relationship to, that's okay. I can acknowledge here, I'm not being the source. I'm constantly comparing. I'm constantly in some kind of weird competition, whether I see it or not. And I'm looking for someone else to tell me what a great relationship is. And when I start reversing it to like, okay, if I was the source for the relationships in my life, what would I choose? And this can be a question that you ask like 10,000 times in a span of 5 years. Like it's not, there is no end result. There is this constant expansion of possibilities.
It's so funny. Yeah, like like every day I destroy and uncreate the PES Junior, so projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections. But that clearing is funny because it's like, so just clearing that, but when you look at that, it can be a lot, right? And so in regards to relationships, it's like how many times do you look at someone and think this will be perfect? It's all
Mm-hmm.
gonna work out.
That's why I loved so much watching Love is Blind. It just gave me that uh, perspective on the insanity of like, it takes us exactly 5 minutes to create this fake future reality about someone with someone. And it has nothing to do, as you said, with like what is.
Well, and then as you go down that road, so like, yeah, as you go down that road, you realize it's not the projection and expectation that you thought it was. Because like you said, you built that 5 minutes, you go down the road, it's like, then you're going to their houses, their apartments, and then you're seeing who they are, but then you're meeting their
Yeah.
families, then you're meeting the in-laws, and then it comes down to the altar, and then it's like,
Oh,
it's kind of funny.
just a capsule of interesting insanity.
Yeah. Oh, actually, last night, so I love the actress Angelina Jolie. So I was like, what movies does she have? So I watched Original Sin
Mhm.
and Antonio Banderas is in it. And I was like, ooh, they're both pretty. So I watched them. But like the whole movie is about relationship and how it has her, well, um I guess yeah, anyways, it's a whole story and it's just kind of like cool. Wow. Really
And
cool.
even that, like the amount of projections and expectations that are towards you, if you're a pretty person, if you're not, like immediately that sets a base of like what can be or what can't be, which is never true.
Well, and the sex they had too. I was like, ooh.
Right.
Ooh, is that what it's supposed to look like? Cool.
Well, and that's exactly where we fuck ourselves, because then when it doesn't look like that in our lives, again, the comparison, the competition, the judgment, and it has nothing to do with my source of reality anymore.
Well,
Can
and
it
it,
look so beautiful? Yes, but is that my beautiful, or am I already now trying to create some image of something I've seen, which is not my reality? And how much do I already leave the situation when I'm trying to create that perfect image?
well, yeah, and then you're not even including your body because you're
Yeah,
thinking of Angelina Jolie and Antonio Banderas banging.
yeah, and you're
But
not there anymore.
well, it's funny because even in the movie industry, it's like all, I mean, I would not, it's not always fake because sometimes they fuck the actors and actresses over, but in most cases, it's not even real because they're covered up anyways, or it's just like there's a lot of like not even that going on. It just
A
looks really good
lot of
because,
editing, a lot of editing.
yeah, yeah. And it could be the stand-in, a stand-in, so it's someone else. But yeah, like you said, like when, yeah, those assumptions and projections about, the perfect image or what it is to be pretty or, even that perfect sex scene, it never is actually what, like in real life, it's like, oh, that's not what I wanted.
Mhm.
And then like you're like, then you fuck yourself over. And it's like, it's kind of a funny pun, but not really funny because you're fucking yourself over.
Exactly. Not in a fun way.
Yeah, you may as well fuck yourself over in a good way. But yeah.
I love where this conversation ended and where we started.
Awesome. It's a great morning
Relationship
conversation.
done different is a big, want to say can of worms, but not only also a can of possibilities, but you have to go on the exploration to see what's real and true for you and what possibilities are available to you that are not available for anyone else if you choose it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was a great conversation. And you do have your class coming up November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And it is online for people who are interested. If you would like to register, you can go on the Access Consciousness website. I'll post a link for that for your class, and then also your website, mayadayan.com. And you could book a session, anyone listening, if you'd like to book a session or ask questions, we'll post the links so that you can take a look at what the class is and register if you'd like. Yeah, and go from there. So thank you, Maya, for hopping on today. It was a fun awesome conversation.
Thank you so much.
Have
Always a
a-
pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.